see that? That's Johnny Depp's X Factor. In 1999, Johnny Depp starred in the film Sleepy Hollow. It grossed $203 million out of a budget of $100 million. Let's take a look at what might have made it a little bit of an underperformer at the box office, shall we? Rolling Stone's Peter Travis says, gorgeous filmmaking that brims over with funhouse thrills and ravishing romance. And San Francisco Chronicle's Mike LaSalle says, a film with no theatrical core and no integrity in the writing, acting, or storytelling. Oof. So what happened to make critics divided? Sleepy Hollow's setting and tone is top-notch. Beautiful compositions, striking visual imagery, gorgeous costumes. The cold open sets the tone, a montage around drafting, signing, and sealing a will. The will is taken in a carriage, and the headless horseman kills the carriage driver. Dark horror comedy with a touch of mystery. Very intriguing. And there's also a great flow to the protagonist's intro scene. We get a sense of him, his desires, and the obstacle to those desires. Ichabod Crane's newfangled investigatory methods based on science and reason are just not appreciated by the old stogies who prefer torture.
Good work.
Now, Sleepy Hollow presents itself initially as a fantasy horror whodunit, but its climax veers into a confusing mishmash of horror, mystery, dark comedy, romance. Sleepy Hollow is very entertaining, and storytelling should be entertaining first and foremost. Certainly, it can tell human truths, but you aren't telling human truths if you don't respect your audience, both their intelligence and their right to be entertained. What you're doing is lecturing, and no one likes a lecture. Now, please listen to my lecture. Most actors, when depicting leading male characters, avoid reactive emoting unless they're doing a character study or a comedy. Take Indiana Jones's fear of snakes as sort of a counterexample that proves the rule.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
He's afraid of snakes. And that's totally relatable, right? Except that this supposed phobia never paralyzes him.
You go first. Steadily.
It's playing a little on the expectation of stoicism while playing it completely straight. Indy never lets snakes stop him from taking action, and we're entertained by the contrast between him taking action and quailing about it. Male leads do not react. They act. Female leads react. They have a lot more latitude to express reactive emotions, which incidentally are emotions that often make us feel a sense of compassion and sympathy for a character. That's why Indy is one of the most beloved, because he's just allowed that little speck of reactivity. Depp's Crane is squeamish, nervous, jumpy, and suspicious, all of which are highly reactive emotions. And this depiction is itself consistent with the original character in the novel written by Washington Irving. In the novel, Ichabod is a comedic foil for prankster Brom, who sort of functions as a more typical leading man, who himself is trying to scare Ichabod off from romancing Katerina. But the role that Johnny Depp's Ichabod Crane plays in the movie is that of a leading man. He's squeamish, yes, but that doesn't stop him from finishing disgusting tasks. He's cowardly, however, there's a consistent pattern to his cowardice. If he has time to think, he psychs himself out, but if his curiosity is engaged, or if he's facing immediate danger, without time to think, he acts with courage. That's something that many of us can relate to. Things that you anticipate can be far more scary than surprises. This brings us to the most obvious symptom of Sleepy Hollow's problem: the flashback. Dun dun dun. Is this intended to be humorous? Because...
Murdered. By my father.
Murdered by?
Murdered to save her soul. By a Bible-black tyrant. Behind a mask of righteousness.
this heartfelt confession?
I was 7
Nothing to do with the story.
When I lost my faith.
Crane's religious zealot of a father murdered his mother under suspicion of witchcraft. He has this horrible experience, but it doesn't create a maladaptive response that he then has to overcome in the climax. Because the maladaptive response, if you can call it that he has to overcome in the climax, is his suspicion of good witch Katrina. And does this flashback indicate that he's suspicious of his mother because she's a witch? My confusion is deep and layered. So why did they put this in? My best guess is that they thought they needed to explain why Ichabod Crane is so reactive. But it doesn't need an explanation because it never stops him from taking action. Just like we don't need a flashback to why Indy is afraid of snakes. Sleepy Hollow then commits a cardinal sin. It tries to fake its complete lack of any kind of character arc for the climax and get us invested in a will they or won't they scenario with Ichabod Crane's mistrust of Katrina because of reasons. Just watching his zealot father kill his mother for witchcraft does not support any kind of suspicion towards Katerina for witchcraft. You need at least one more step for that. Like, oh yeah, Dad, I'm really glad you killed Mom. Because something? And this ends up being an 11th hour development that hinges on Detective Crane, who relies on evidence and facts.
I stand up for sense and justice.
To instead rely on hasty assumptions backed up by a bout of infectious stupid.
Take this.
What detective doesn't even look at the spell book he's given at the beginning of the story to determine if the spell his girlfriend chalked under his bed is good or evil? This instantaneous flaw leads Crane to believe Katerina is the murderer and leave her because he doesn't want to arrest her. When he realizes he forgot to check his sources, he returns to save her from the actual killer. What is that? Speaking of Katrina, Christina Ricci is criminally underutilized in this film. She does nothing except be saved. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing.
Will you take nothing from Sleepy Hollow that was worth the coming here?
What is that? I don't have a problem with the damsel in distress trope because I know the damsel is the most powerful character in the story. It's her well-being that sets up the moral framework. It's her emotional range that provides the emotional weight to the events. And it's her virtues that turn an essentially passive character into someone you are still willing to root for. And that's actually difficult because most people really do not like passive characters. Making them sympathetic requires a certain amount of skill. And all of that adds up to some serious work for the damsel. Because of the amount of reactivity that Depp gives Ichabod, he almost functions like both the leading man, active with a character arc, as it was, and the damsel, granting events emotional weight through his reactions, which isn't really great for Richie, who has almost nothing to do at all. And that is tremendously bad if your climax is appealing to a will they or won't they romance trope. If your female main character is devoid of emotion, you don't care if the main male character ends up with her, rescues her, shoots her, abandons her for permanent bachelorhood with his plucky boy sidekick. You just don't care. Hollywood is really clumsy when it comes to balancing gender dynamics like these. They're one note, and that note is women are victims of being depicted as damsels, which has led them to dismiss the role of damsel entirely. They have no functional solution for situations like this because they probably do not realize that it is a balance between action and reactivity that's creating sort of an what is that? Get rid of that flashback, it's doing nothing. Or replace it with something that actually establishes Ichabod's fear of Katrina. And if you can't give Ricci room to damsel because Depp is hogging it all, then really push her emotionlessness as hard as you can. You know, use her. Use her talents in depicting creepy, sinister, emotionless girls.
Why are you dressed like somebody died? Wait.
And develop her as a credible source of Ichabod's fear. Make her spook him. Make him desire her despite it. A nervous, jumpy guy with a woman who's spooky as hell? That's a romance I'd read. Then give Katrina something to do in the climax. Have her be the good witch foil to the main villain. Make her father the person who needs to be saved, thus sparing us that baffling digression in the church. What is that? Johnny Depp takes reactivity in the leading man to a whole other dimension. He makes us pay attention to how events affect the characters that he creates. He's not afraid to go there in his work. Unfortunately, it has the drawback of creating characters that are bigger than the stories they appear in. There are other leading men who've busted out of their stories with the power of reactivity. Lee Pace is a name that comes to mind. Marlon Brando could really suck the wind out of the damsel's sails. The film version of Streetcar Named Desire handled this with aplomb. Unfortunately, Hollywood has only gotten worse when it comes to gender dynamics, not better. It's that power to make us pay attention to his internal life that is Johnny's X factor. We were willing to see him as an abuse victim because he was willing to show us his fear, his nervousness, his pain, his sadness in a way that most leading men won't. It's not safe, it's not easy, it's high risk, but he did it. This is something he earned for himself. Now, people have pointed to his wealth, his charisma, his good looks, his fame, and his eventual exoneration, and they all played their part. But what about his choice to bleed for his audience? Thank you for your kind attention. And after I do my little spiel, I will give you a bit of bonus content. If you enjoy the work that I do, please consider supporting it so I can continue to do that. You can do so at feedthebadger.com. There is a one-time donation option at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And we also have subscription options, which are recurring amounts that really help out. So once again, that is feedthebadger.com. And if you're just not ready maybe to invest in that, you can also join our mailing list, which I will put in the low bar, and I will put a link here. And and the mailing list, I'm going to be sending out previews, coming attractions, special content, and also updates on Badger happenings and how you can help support us as well. So, mailing list here in the low bar, maybe go to feedthebadger.com, throw a few shekels in the hat so I can continue this work, and here's your bonus content. And I hope you have a lovely day. Up next, how Edward Scissorhands gets it right.
You.
I'm not finished.
Oh! Put those down. Don't come any closer. Just, please,